It's Wednesday, July 7th, and the time for your Barbados Today morning news update. A three-member independent panel has been selected to hear half a dozen charges leveled against the suspended president of the National Union of Public Workers. The NUPW's National Council on Tuesday reached the consensus that Kenny McDowell will have to answer to the 6 charges, while suspended union member Natalie Murray must face 3. Emmanuel Joseph has the story.
A well-informed source told Barbados Today that both public workers now have to be officially notified of the decision. However, sources say that one charge claims that during the period June 2, 2021 to June 17, 2021, McDowell condoned, encouraged and promoted on social media, radio, television and print a resolution in which it was sought, among other things, to install him as Secretary General for 4 years, contrary to 3 separate union rules. A second charge alleges that the suspended NUPW leader engaged in conduct in a manner that was set to create chaos and calculated to bring the union into disrepute, and therefore is liable to be sanctioned in accordance with union rules. He is also accused of being party to a petition that defamed senior staff members, which could fracture the relationship between the union and its members, and therefore goes contrary to the spirit of union rules. The council has also alleged that McDowell entered the NUPW Secretariat around 3:15 p.m. on June 16, 2021 and took a photograph of a union check payable to Queen's Counsel Larry Smith for legal services, and by his actions caused the photograph of the said check to be circulated through social media along with derogatory comments. Murray, on the other hand, is charged with promoting on social media, on radio, television, and in print the same resolution in which it was sought, among other things, to install McDowell as Secretary General for 4 years, contrary to 3 separate rules and in contravention of the established policy and practices of the NUPW. She is also accused that, along with others, she conducted herself contrary to Rule 17A2, calculated to undermine and overturn the authority and power of the National Council, and to overturn the union's staff structure and disrupt the settled process for filling staff vacancies. The final charge against her claims that she brought the organization into disrepute, injuring its standing and therefore not in the interests of the National Union of Public Workers. In coming to this conclusion, the charge cited her alleged conduct at a meeting of the council held on June 8, 2021, in which the police had to be called in to restore order. Neither Acting General Secretary Wayne Warren nor his deputy Richard Green could be reached for comment Tuesday night. When contacted that same night for a response to the charges, McDowell told Barbados Today he had not yet been officially notified. Murray also stated that she had not yet seen the charges against her. Emmanuel Joseph for Barbados Today.
Parliament has given the green light for government to take more than $11 million from the Consolidated Fund to continue assisting former Barbadian LIAT employees as well as families affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The sum of $1.74 million will go towards ensuring that the airline workers who were sent home last year without any severance can continue to receive financial assistance, while $10 million will cover the shortfall on the government's Adopt Our Families program so that those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic can continue to get assistance. The monies are part of a $34.8 million supplementary to the 2021-2022 estimates of expenditure, which was approved by the House of Assembly on Tuesday morning when a resolution introduced by the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Strawn, was passed.
This money is for the remainder of this financial year, and I know that the first payment started in May, and this will go to making that expiration payment on behalf of those Barbadian employees of LIAT, of course pending obviously the resolution of the circumstances with LIAT being registered and operated from Antigua. Once that is resolved, but we felt it was important that some relief is given to these workers in this way, which will help to ease some of the anxiety and burden as it relates to what effectively has been the cessation of the business model of LEAT.
As for other Barbadians who were impacted by COVID-19 and received assistance on the government's Adopt Our Families program, Strawn said an additional $10 million was needed to supplement the approved amount at the start of the financial year.
This is to ensure that the program can continue and that the persons who still continue to benefit from this particular initiative, that they can continue to do so. Barbadians still continue to donate to that program, and I urge them to continue to do so if they can, because it is important, Madam Chair, that ash notwithstanding certainly, and certainly with respect to the coming out of the last lockdown earlier this year, now we've had the experience with Hurricane Elsa. It is critical that obviously these families that were already in some level of financial stress, that we at least continue to be able to support them in this particular way until such time as the economy can recover and persons can return to work in full and be able then to support themselves and their families once again. And so
Government again signals its intentions to impose minimum housing standards for building after Hurricane Elsa wreaked havoc on some of the country's substandard housing stock. Reflecting on the significant damage left in the wake of the recent hurricane, Home Affairs Minister Wilfred Abrams acknowledged that many houses have fallen woefully short of acceptable standards. He said that the evidence was even more glaring when one considered the fact that Elsa was on the lower end of cyclonic intensity.
That alone tells us everything that we need to know. Yes, I agree, Barry, that our building code is voluntarily, it points to, I guess, best practices, but there's nothing requiring people to do it. There's no liability on contractors who do shoddy work. There's no liability on architects and engineers who do poor designing, and that is one of the things that we're going to have to look at. There'll be further communication on that, but there are lessons coming out of this event that we cannot possibly ignore, and one of those is that there must be certain minimum legislative standards for building that persons have to toe the line at. A lot of our housing stock exists already, and there's probably very little you can do to existing houses that people live in. But going forward in terms of building new structures, then there must be some minimum level that construction must meet to make us resilient to natural disasters. We should not be getting the level of destruction that we're getting or that we got for the passage of a Category 1 hurricane.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
Regional developments now. CARICOM is hoping to have at least 80% of the region's population fully vaccinated against COVID-19 by the end of this year. And while Caribbean governments will be rolling out strategies to achieve this goal, enforcing mandatory vaccination will not be among them. That's according to CARICOM Chairman Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Speaking to members of the media virtually following the conclusion of the 42nd regular meeting of CARICOM heads of governments last evening, Brown said reaching 80% herd immunity was critical if regional countries were to get their economies back on track.
Heads have been utilizing their efforts now for several months to access vaccines from various sources. You'll be aware that the U.S. has promised to assist us with vaccines. We also have a possible source from the African platform, and other bilateral arrangements have been made to get sufficient vaccines so that we can fully inoculate our respective populations within the region. The world is literally opening up on us, and we have to move quickly to achieve herd immunity so that we can control the further spread of COVID and its variants. And we obviously have to move assiduously to try and avoid further hospitalizations and deaths. But most importantly is to achieve herd immunity so that we can protect our economies from further wounds. I mean, the wounds that have been inflicted so far, the last, let's say, 16 months, they're extremely deep. And it's important for us to return to normalcy, but the only way to return to normalcy is through herd immunity. And the only way to achieve herd immunity without, having a lot of hospitalizations and deaths is by virtue of getting our people vaccinated, at least 70% of our respective populations. So that is a major priority for us.
The CARICOM chairman also conceded that a vaccine hesitancy among the region's population was a worrying concern.
We've been extremely concerned about the issue of vaccine hesitancy within the region, and strategies were actually considered to try and get our people to take up these vaccines in order to protect lives and livelihoods. So we have set by the end of the year to achieve herd immunity, because we feel confident that based on ongoing efforts that we'll have sufficient vaccines in order to ensure that our population will be fully immunized by the end of the year. Insofar as the issue of achieving or tackling vaccine hesitancy, there's no policy of mandatory vaccinations. What we have chosen instead is to utilize persuasion using very influential persons within the society, and obviously to have a very strong and robust public education program in order to encourage individuals to get vaccinated. And we've agreed on a harmonized program to be developed, and one in which we will urge individuals, especially those on the front lines, those who deliver tourism services and come in contact with the tourists, our immigration officers, port workers, because at the end of the day, we're also trying to control the spread of the more deadly strains, to include the Delta strain that is wreaking havoc in other countries. So ultimately, it will be one of public awareness, and also working in lockstep with the private sector to encourage the workers to get vaccinated.
On the international scene, the U.S. government has launched a new plan to get more residents vaccinated against COVID-19 amid the spread of the Delta variant. More from CBS News.
A new warning from President Biden about the COVID-19 Delta variant after meeting with top health officials.
We discussed how the Delta variant is already responsible for half of all cases in many parts of this country. It's more easily transmissible, potentially more dangerous.
The number of cases across the country is up by 9%, and several states are seeing a dramatic surge. Arkansas is now averaging 475 new cases a day, compared to 142 a month ago. In Missouri, 861 people are testing positive, up from 396. And in Nevada, there are 449 new cases, more than double the 204 in June. Most of the states with spikes also have vaccination rates that are lower than the nationwide average.
Millions of Americans are still unvaccinated and unprotected. And because of that, their communities are at risk.
The president said the administration would continue door-to-door outreach in local communities hesitant to get vaccinated, and also provide more doses to schools and workplaces. But some people who have access to the vaccine still don't want it.
That's news. But for the very latest, visit us at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. And you can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.